Tonight, there is no switch on the wall. When the sun goes down, really goes down, the way it did for almost everyone who ever lived, the world does not dim, it closes. The corners of the room disappear first, then the far wall, then your own hands, until the only thing left is the small, trembling coin of light you have paid for, and the dark pressing in gently all around it. So before we lie down, let me ask you something. What if the thing you believe about a good night's sleep, the 8 unbroken hours, the single clean fall into morning, what if that was invented only a few lifetimes ago? What if, for most of human history, the night was not one sleep, but two? So dim the lights, or better, turn them off. Feel the room get a little larger, a little older. Get comfortable. We'll be here a long while, and there is no hurry tonight. And if drifting off into forgotten history is something you'd like more of, you might quietly subscribe, only if it truly helps your nights. And before we begin, tell me where you're listening from tonight and what hour it is where you are. I read everyone before my own light goes out. Now, close your eyes. Let the day you had loosen its grip. We are going to step together into a night lit only by fire, into a bedroom 400 years ago, and ask a question that once had a very different answer. When darkness fell, how did anyone actually sleep? Let's begin where every night began, not with the bed, with the light going out. Picture the last hour of daylight in a small house. Timber and plaster, a single low room, or two if the family was fortunate. Outside, the fields or the narrow street are draining of color. Inside, the fire on the hearth has burned down to a red, breathing heap, and someone, perhaps you, is deciding a question that we never have to think about at all. Whether it is worth making light, because light tonight is not free. It is not a switch and a hidden bill at the end of the month. It is a thing you hold in your hand, that you made or bought, that burns down as you watch it, and when it is gone, it is simply gone. To light the dark is to spend, and so, as the last gray drains out of the window, the whole household drifts, without a word out of pure habit, toward the one warm thing left in the world, the fire. This is the hour the historians call, beautifully, the shutting in. Doors barred, shutters closed against the cold and against whatever the night was thought to carry. In town, you might hear it happen. A bell ringing out across the roofs, the old curfew bell, telling everyone that the day was legally, officially over. And after it, the night told you the rest in sounds. The watchman's slow call, a dog, a cart on wet stone, and then, less and less, until there was almost nothing at all. Stay with that a moment. A world with no clock anywhere in it. Not in the house, not on your wrist, not glowing on any wall. If you wanted the hour, you listened. The town spoke it to you. Church bells rang out the offices of the day and told the hours as they passed. And a particular bell meant a particular thing. And everyone alive knew the vocabulary by heart. The market bell, the curfew bell, the slow, single, spaced-out strokes of the passing bell, telling the whole parish that somewhere close by, a soul was leaving the world. Sound was not merely noise. Sound was news. The time, the weather, the mood of the place, carried through the dark to people who could not see it and would never have thought to look. You knew where you were, and when you were, by ear alone. And so the slow thinning out of the night was itself a kind of clock, the sounds falling away one by one, until only the deep ones were left. The wind, the fire, the breathing of the house. And you understood, without a single number anywhere, that it had grown very late, and it was time to be down. And into that enormous quiet, if you wanted to stay awake even a little longer, to finish a task, to say the prayers, to simply sit, you had to answer the question again. Was it worth the light? To understand why that question mattered so much, we have to talk gently about the price of a single flame. Here is something almost impossible to feel today. Standing in a room you can flood with light for a fraction of a cent. For most of human history, artificial light was one of the most expensive things an ordinary person could buy. Not a little more expensive, thousands of times more. Economists have actually traced this, candle by candle, across 7 centuries. And the number they arrive at is so strange it takes a moment to settle. To produce the amount of light that a single modern bulb throws off carelessly in 1 year, you would have needed to burn something like 17,000 candles. And to afford those, an ordinary working person in the early 1800s would have had to labor for around 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours of work for the light we now leave burning in an empty hallway by accident. So the light in our bedroom tonight is not decoration. It is a small glowing act of wealth. If it is a clean burning beeswax candle, someone in this house is doing well. That steady honey-colored flame is the light of the comfortable. If it is tallow, rendered animal fat, it gives a dimmer, greasier light, and it smells faintly of the kitchen and worse. And if this is a poorer house, there may be no candle at all, only a rushlight, a single reed, stripped and soaked in leftover grease, burning at an angle in an iron clip. A rushlight was the light of the many. It was cheap. It was also dim and quick and gone in minutes. And you did not buy that rushlight, most likely. You made it. There is a lovely account of exactly how, set down by an English curate named Gilbert White, near the end of the 1700s. You gathered the long, soft rushes from the wet ground, and you stripped away most of the peel, leaving one thin rib to hold the soft pith together. You let them dry, and then you drew them, again and again, through hot fat, whatever grease the kitchen could spare, the skimmings and scrapings of the cooking, until each reed had drunk up all it could hold. A pound of rushes, treated so, cost you almost nothing, and would give you, by White's own patient reckoning, hour upon hour of light, one slender, leaning reed at a time. But almost nothing still meant something, in a house that weighed every penny. And so even the poorest light was rationed. You lit the rush only when you truly needed it, to find the bed, to quiet the baby, to see a face, and you pinched it out the instant you did not. Because the numbers, stretched across the long centuries, are almost past believing. Measured with care, the price of light in an English home fell over 700 years, not by half, not by 9/10, but by something on the order of 12,000 times over, which means, turned the other way around, that the careless evening glow we pour out today, without a second thought, was, to the people in this house, one of the dearest things they would ever hold in their hands. Whatever it is, you do not waste it. You do not read 3 rooms away from it. You gather close, all of you, inside the one small circle it makes. And you understand, in your body, a fact we have completely forgotten. That light was a place, a little warm island with a family on it, and an ocean of dark all around. And this quietly is the first answer to our question. How did people sleep before electricity? Part of the answer is simply earlier and in the dark, because the alternative costs too much to burn for long. When your light is precious, the night is not something you push back with a lamp and a screen. It is something you enter. You let it come. So let the rushlight gutter low. Let the fire settle to embers. It is time now to do the thing this whole night has been moving toward. It is time to go to the bed. But the bed, too, is not what you think it is. So you cross the cold floor toward the bed. And here is the first surprise of the night. Because the bed you are walking toward is not a piece of furniture. It is quite possibly the single most valuable thing your family owns. We have a record of it, an ordinary one, which is what makes it so remarkable. A Lancashire farmer named Richard Latham, keeping his household accounts in the year 1724, bought a feather bed and a bolster to go with it. It cost him £2 and 3 shillings. And that single purchase was the largest sum his household spent on anything that entire year. More than clothing, more than tools, more than any animal in the yard. A bed. Think about what that means. A good bed was not something you replaced. It was something you inherited. Beds appear in wills, named and described and left with great care. The feather bed, the good bolster, the pair of sheets, passed from mother to daughter, from father to son, like land. Because in a small way it was. And what is it made of, this treasure you are climbing into? That depends entirely on what you can afford, and you can hear the difference before you feel it. If you are poor, the mattress, the tick, is stuffed with straw or with chaff, the husk left over from threshing the grain, and it crackles and shifts beneath you like something half alive. And by morning it has flattened into a shape you will have to beat back into softness tomorrow. A little better off, and it is flock, matted wool and old rags. And the dream, the luxury, the thing worth a year's savings, is feathers. Down that holds your warmth and rises soft all around you. Whatever is beneath you, you are almost certainly not alone in it. And I don't only mean your family, though we will come to them. I mean the smaller guests, the fleas, the lice, the little creatures that lived in the seams and the straw and came out as you settled to see who had arrived. This was simply the tax of a warm bed in a world with no way to be rid of them. And people knew it and cursed it and joked about it in every century we can still read. But the family, yes, because here's the thing we, in our separate quiet rooms, find hardest to picture. For most of human history, to sleep was to sleep together. Not romantically, practically. The whole family might share one bed or one mattress on the floor. Parents, children, the baby, sometimes a grandparent, packed warm against one another like a small heap of banked coals. Servants slept at the foot of the bed or across the doorway. And when you traveled and stopped for the night at an inn, you did not rent a room. You rented a space in a bed, and you might well be sharing it that night with a complete stranger. Picture it. You arrive late, cold, tired, aching from the road. You are shown up a dark stair, and there, already asleep in the bed you have paid good money for, is a person you have never met, and you simply get in. You negotiate the blanket in the dark. You learn within about a minute whether he snores. In the morning, you might not even trade names. It was so ordinary that nobody bothered to explain it. It survives only in the letters of the occasional weary traveler, complaining about a bedfellow who stole the covers, or kept his boots on, or turned out, awkwardly, to be a great deal friendlier than hoped. This was a world with almost no privacy, as we would understand the word, and at first almost no private bedroom either. The bed often stood in the main room of the house, the very room where you cooked and ate and worked, curtained off at best. A separate chamber, up the stairs with a door you could pull shut, a room meant only for sleeping, was a slow and strange invention, spreading across these same centuries, driven by a new desire that would have puzzled your grandparents, the wish to be, for a few hours, unseen. And we can actually watch that desire spread, house by house, because it left a paper trail. When people died, someone would walk through the home and list what they owned, room by room, and historians have since read many thousands of these quiet inventories. Across the 16 and 1700s, you can see the bed begin to move. It lifts off the ground floor, out of the busy public. Everything happens here, main room, and it climbs the stairs into a chamber of its own, a room set a little apart, a little more enclosed, a little more yours. The number of beds in a household creeps upward too, as children and servants are granted corners of their own. Slowly, unevenly, across generations, the crowd around the bed begins to thin, and something we now take entirely for granted is being quietly invented. A private place to sleep and a door you can close upon the world. But your bed tonight is not yet there. Your bed is here, in the thick of the house, in the warm crowd, with the fire ticking low and the family breathing all around you. And keeping it fit to lie in was a small labor of its own. The tick to be shaken and turned so it did not pack down hard as a board. The sheets to be aired against the endless damp. The whole warm nest made and unmade again each day, so that the treasure did not slowly rot beneath you. A bed was not simply owned, it was tended, like a fire or a garden. And the strangest monument to the shared bed is still standing. You can go and look at it. It is called the Great Bed of Ware, built around 1590, and it is enormous, wide enough to hold something like a dozen sleepers at once. But it was not made for a family. It was made most likely as an attraction, a marvel for an inn in a town a day's ride from London, a bed so famous that Shakespeare himself worked it into a play. A bed as a tourist trap. Even 400 years ago, people would travel to see a very large place to sleep. So find your place in it now, wherever you are in the warm heap of the household, whatever is crackling softly beneath you. Pull the blanket up to your chin. Let the last murmur in the room fall quiet. The fire is a low red breathing. The rushlight is out, or nearly. And you begin, at last, to do the thing your body has been asking for since the sun went down. You begin to fall into the first sleep, and it is called the first sleep for a reason we have very nearly forgotten. Here is where our night meets its quiet mystery, the strange, half-buried idea that brought you here in the first place. For a long time, historians simply assumed that people in the past slept much as we try to. Down for the night, one long stretch, up with the light. And then a historian named Roger Eckhurk spent years reading through the ordinary records of ordinary nights. Diaries, letters, court testimony, medical books, poems, prayers. And he began to notice a phrase, the same phrase over and over across centuries, in language after language, used so casually that the writers clearly expected every reader to understand it. First sleep, and its partner, second sleep. Not a metaphor, not a poet's flourish, a time of night. People wrote of waking after their first sleep, the way you or I might write just before dawn, a shared landmark on the map of the dark that everyone seemed to carry. And Eckhurk's argument, built on more than 1,000 of these small mentions, was this: that across the pre-industrial Western world, the ordinary shape of a night was not one sleep, but two. You went down not long after dark. You slept deeply for a few hours. And then, on your own, without an alarm, without meaning to, you woke, not anxious, not broken, simply awake in the deep middle of the night for an hour or so, before sinking back down into the second sleep and on toward morning. The philosopher Francis Bacon had a plain name for the gap between the two. He spoke of the first sleep and the second sleep, the waking hour lying between them like a small clearing in a wood. And much later, the writer Robert Louis Stevenson, out sleeping under the open sky, felt it steal over him and called it something lovelier, a nightly resurrection. And once you know to listen for it, you find it nearly everywhere. Eckhurk turned up the two sleeps not in one place or one century, but scattered across more than 1,000 sources, and in the end, more than 2,000, in novels and letters and poems, in the sworn testimony of witnesses at criminal trials, in medical books and prayer books, in the diaries of travelers, in language after language, reaching all the way back to the Rome of 2,000 years ago and forward, thinning, fading into the early years of the 20th century. And here is the strange, convincing part. Almost no one is ever explaining it. They simply mention it in passing, the way you or I might mention lunch, completely certain that whoever they are writing to will know exactly what they mean. A woman waking at her first sleep to say her prayers. A man doing his clearest thinking between the sleeps. A physician advising that a remedy be taken after the first sleep. It is the offhandedness that persuades. You do not stop to explain the ordinary. You only explain the strange. And to them, this was not strange at all. It was just the night. But we are not there yet. That waking is still hours away. Right now, there is only the falling, the long, warm, downward drift of the first sleep, the one your whole body has been leaning toward all evening. So we will slow down here, you and I. We will simply let it come. There is nothing you need to understand for a while. There is nothing you need to do. Only the weight of the blanket, only the small sounds of the house cooling and settling around you. A beam, a coal, the wind finding the gap in the shutter. Only the warmth of the bodies near you, rising and falling, rising and falling. The dark is complete now, and it is not empty. It is full and close and old. It has held every person who ever lived on every night there ever was. Right here, just like this. Let it hold you too. Let the first sleep carry you down. We'll wake together at midnight. And now, you wake, not with a start. Not because anything is wrong. The fire has fallen to a faint red pulse. The house is utterly still, and you are simply quietly awake in the deep middle of the night, in the hour that has no name for us and had 100 names for them. This is the clearing between the two sleeps. This is the watch. And here's the part that is hardest to believe, lying as we do in an age of glowing clocks and 3 in the morning worry. For most of the people who ever lived, this waking was not a problem. It was not insomnia. It was not a night gone wrong. It was just the middle of the night arriving on schedule, the way it always had. And what you did with it was yours. Some prayed. In truth, the hour was thought especially good for it. The house silent, the mind rinsed clean by sleep, the soul somehow nearer to heaven in the dark. Whole little books of prayers were written for exactly this moment, prayers to be said after the first sleep. Physicians gave the waking their blessing too. More than one medical writer advised that the hour after first sleep was the best time of all to conceive a child. You were rested, unhurried, warm. Others simply lay still and let the mind wander back over the day, or forward into tomorrow, or nowhere at all. Some talked, low, to whoever was breathing beside them. Some rose to bank the fire, or look in on a restless animal, or step to the door and read the slow wheel of the stars, the only clock they had. And some worked. If there was spinning to be done, or the bread to set, the watch was an hour you could use. It was not wasted time. It was a second, smaller evening, folded quietly into the middle of the night, and then closed again. The doctors of the age took the hour seriously in their fashion. Medical writers noticed that a remedy taken after the first sleep sometimes seemed to work better than the same remedy taken at bedtime. A rough, groping early version of an idea our own science has only lately caught up with. That the body keeps time, and that the very same medicine can land differently at different hours of the night. They did not have the biology for it, but they had the pattern, worn smooth by centuries of ordinary use, and they built their small, careful advice on top of it. And for those who shared a bed with someone they loved, the watch had another, gentler reputation. To wake in the deep middle of the night, warm, unhurried, rested by the first sleep, the whole quiet house asleep around you. This, the physicians agreed, was as fine a time as any to make a child. There is something disarming in that. The very hour we now spend staring at the ceiling in a thin, familiar dread. They spent, some of them, in prayer, or in low talk, or in tenderness, or in nothing much at all. The hour had not changed. What had changed was that they were not afraid of it. For a long while, this all sounded, to modern ears, like a pretty story from a vanished world. And then, in our own age, a sleep scientist tested it, almost by accident. His name was Thomas Vare, and he took ordinary, healthy people and gave them something we almost never feel anymore: long nights. 14 hours of darkness, night after night, the way deep winter used to be before we lit it away. And their sleep came apart, not into chaos, into a pattern. After a few weeks, they stopped sleeping in a single block. They began to sleep in two: a first sleep and a second sleep, divided by a calm, wakeful hour in the dead middle of the night. Awake, but not distressed, resting in the dark, the very same shape arriving on its own, in a laboratory, in bodies that had only ever known the electric night, as though it had been waiting under the surface the whole time. So lie here a while, in your hour that is not a mistake. There is nothing to fix, nowhere to be. The dark is enormous, and the bed is warm, and the night is only half spent. Rest in the clearing between the sleeps. But the dark beyond the shutter, beyond the barred door, was not to the people of this night an empty thing. It was crowded, and to understand the night they slept in, we have to step carefully out into it. Open the shutter just a crack and look out at the night these people truly lived in, because it was not our night. For roughly 2 centuries, from the 1400s to the 1600s, the European night was understood, quite literally, as enemy country. The daylight belonged to people. The dark belonged to something else. Night was the devil's kingdom. The hours when witches were thought to ride, when the dead were said to walk, when evil moved unseen across a world that had, sensibly, barred its doors and put out its lights. This was not a vague unease. It was a map, with places you did not go and things you did not do once the sun was down. The fear had a face, and the face was not human. And walking straight through that fear came one of the few figures permitted to own the night: the watchman. You can hear him if you listen. The slow scrape of his footsteps on the stones, and then his voice calling the hour and the weather out over a sleeping town. 12 o'clock, and all is well. He carried a lantern and a staff, and his cry was many things at once: a clock for the sleeping, a comfort, a warning to thieves that someone was awake, and one small human sound, thrown out against a very large dark. And in that dark, every sound grew larger and heavier with meaning. Silence, at least, meant that nothing was wrong, but the wrong sound at the wrong hour, a footstep where no footstep should be, a cry cut short, a slow scratching at the shutter, could sit you bolt upright in the black with your heart slamming against your ribs, straining to tell a stray dog from a stranger, the wind from a voice, and in a world that half believed the night belonged to the devil, you did not always lie there waiting to learn which of the two it was. And some of the dark got in anyway, not through the door, but through sleep itself. Because if you woke in the watch with a crushing weight upon your chest, unable to move, certain that something was in the room, sitting on you, pressing the very breath out of you, you did not think, as we do, of sleep paralysis and a brain caught between stages. You thought, the mare, a creature, a hag, a thing that came in the night and sat upon the sleeping. It is where our word still comes from, every time we use it: nightmare. The dark had a weight, and it had a name, and now and then it climbed into the bed with you. So you guarded yourself the way people always have, with words. The last thing many did before the first sleep took them was kneel and pray beside the bed, to keep the house, to keep the soul through the hours it would spend undefended in the dark. Historians have a gentle name for this whole quiet habit: sleep piety. The bedstead became a small altar. The prayer became a wall. You lay down inside it and hoped it held until morning. And even your dreams were not merely dreams. In this world, a dream might be your own body speaking, a warning of sickness rising in you. Or it might be the future, leaking backward into the night. Or it might be a message, sent by God or by an angel, or by something colder, testing you in the one place you could not keep your guard. People kept dream books to read them by. A dream was mail from somewhere else, and you woke wondering who had sent it. And yet, even as you lie here, walled in behind your prayer, the great dark outside is not quite as total as it feels. Because in the largest cities of Europe, in these very centuries, something new has begun to flicker. Slowly and at real expense, the authorities are starting to hang lamps in the streets. The first public lighting arriving in the great capital somewhere in the later 1600s. And wherever the lamps go up, the night begins, warily, to change. People start to keep it, to move through it and meet in it, to trade and drink and argue and do business by artificial light in hours that had always belonged to the devil and the watchman alone. Historians have a word for this slow claiming of the dark. They call it the nocturnalization of life. It would take centuries to finish. It is barely even a rumor in a small house like this one, on a plain night like tonight. But it means something we rarely stop to notice, that the modern night, our night, the lit and busy and unafraid one, did not begin with the electric bulb at all. It had already started, one guttering street lamp at a time, long before anyone so much as dreamed of electricity. The bulb only finished what the candle had quietly begun. Close the shutter now. Whatever is out there is out there. And you are in here, in the warm heap of the household, behind the barred door, inside the wall of your prayer. The watchman's voice comes once more, fainter from another street. All is well. The fire is nearly gone, and the pull of the second sleep is rising in you again, slow and certain, warm as the blanket, older than the fear. Let it take you back down. There is only a little of the night left, and as it closes over you, one last question waits for the morning, the question that has been beneath this whole night all along. The second sleep is the sweeter one. Ask anyone who has felt it. There is a particular softness to sleep that comes after awaking, a sense of sinking into something already warm, of returning rather than beginning. The night is nearly spent. The fear has passed. The fire is ash. And you go down easily now, carry the last few hours toward a gray window in the first stirrings of a waking house. A cock, a cart, a voice in another room, and morning, arriving as it always does to close the oldest story there is. That was the night then. First sleep, the watch, second sleep, and dawn. And for years this was told as a simple, settled truth. This is how everyone slept, once, before we ruined it with the electric light. But it isn't settled. And the honest answer to the question on the screen, 2 sleeps, turns out to be far more interesting than a clean and tidy yes. Because not long ago, another historian went back through Eckhurt's evidence, the same diaries, the same phrases, the same court records, and asked a harder question. Was first sleep really proof that everyone slept in 2 neat halves? His name was Niall Boyce, and his conclusion was careful, and it matters. Segmented sleep, he wrote, may well have been something some people did, some of the time, but it was not, he argued, the single, universal, everyone did it pattern it is sometimes made out to be. The phrase first sleep did not always mean a fixed nightly ritual. Sometimes it meant only the first time you happen to fall asleep. The past, it turns out, is a slippery place in which to prove a habit. And then there is the harder evidence still, not from books, but from the living. Because even now there are a few communities in the world who sleep without a single electric light. Hunter-gatherers and farmers in Tanzania, in Namibia, in Bolivia, and on the islands of the Pacific. And scientists have gone and measured their nights carefully across thousands of nights. If 2 sleeps were the natural human default, the thing our bodies simply do the moment the light bulb is taken away, this is exactly where we would expect to find it. And mostly, sure, they do not. These communities, living the closest thing we have to a truly pre-electric night, largely sleep in one block, not two. They do not wake for a long watch in the middle of the night, and they quietly overturn nearly everything we assume about natural sleep. They do not fall asleep at sunset. They drop off on average more than 3 hours after dark, and they do not sleep longer than we do. If anything, a little less, around 6 or 7 hours a night. The romantic picture of our ancestors going down with the sun and sleeping the whole long night away is simply not what the measurements show. So which is true? The diaries full of first sleeps and second sleeps, or the sleep labs measuring one quiet block? And the honest answer is both and neither, and it depends. Sleep was never one single thing, the same in every house and every century. It bent around candlelight and cold and fear and faith, and around how many people you shared a bed with. Some slept in 2 halves and thought nothing of it. Some slept straight through till morning. The past did not have one night, it had many millions of them, and we have only ever overheard a few. Eckhart himself, faced with all this doubt, did not retreat, but he did bend a little in the honest way that good historians do. The change from 2 sleeps to one, he came to think, was never a clean break, but a long, slow, uneven fading, stretching well into the 1800s, dying out in the cities first, and lingering in the quiet countryside for generations after. And he pointed to one small, sharp fact that is difficult to forget once you have heard it. It was only in the late 1800s, only as the old segmented night was finally guttering out, that waking in the middle of the night began to be treated as an illness, a thing with a clinical name. Sleep maintenance insomnia, the doctors would learn to call it, a disorder, a malfunction, a fault in the machine to be corrected with a pill. And you have to wonder, what if the thing we now diagnose and dread and medicate, the 3 in the morning waking, the hour of open-eyed dark, was never a modern sickness at all? What if it is only the ghost of the old first sleep, still rising in us, right on time, in bodies that no longer have a name for it, or a use for it, or the faintest idea that it was ever anything but wrong? And maybe that is the real thing to carry out of this old bed and back into your own. Not a rule about how you are supposed to sleep, just a strange, steady comfort of knowing that if you wake tonight in the deep middle and lie there a while in the dark, you are not broken. You are not failing at anything. You are doing something very, very old. Half the people who ever lived have lain exactly where you are lying now, awake in the same dark, listening to the same silence, waiting, without any worry at all, for sleep to come back. It will come back. It always has. The window is gray now, then faintly gold. Somewhere a bird has started up, and the house is beginning to stir. A door, a step, the small machinery of another day beginning. The fire will be built back up. The bed will be beaten and aired and left to the light. And the enormous dark that held the whole world only a few hours ago has simply lifted. the way it always does, as though it had never been anything to fear at all. We did trade it away in the end. The two sleeps, the watch, the crowded warm bed, the darkness with a name. We lit it all away, with the flick of a switch and a price so small we never once think of it. And we gained more than we can easily count. Safety and time and the freedom to make of the night whatever we please. But somewhere in that trade, we also let go of the quiet hour in the middle of the dark, the clearing between the sleeps, the one that belonged to no one and asked nothing of you. So tonight, when you turn out your light, the light you can summon with a fingertip, the light that would have been an unimaginable treasure to every single person in this story, perhaps let the dark be a little larger than usual. Let it be old. And if you wake hours from now, in the deep middle of the night, don't reach for the glowing screen. Just lie there a while, in the dark, in the company of the whole sleeping history of the world. You are in good company. You always were. Sleep well. We'll wander another night. Soon.